Lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, DC Drano. Let's talk about Israel. DC Drano says, we pay hundreds of billions of dollars every year to CIA, DIA, NSA, Pentagon, State Department to protect American interests overseas, especially our greatest ally in the Middle East, Israel. One of two things happened with this Hamas terrorist attack. One, the Biden regime didn't catch Hamas planning a massive military operation with thousands of rockets, thousands of troops, boats, paragliders, and a symbolic 50-year war anniversary. Or the Biden regime knew and let it happen. Either way, people need to be held accountable for their incompetence at best or abject evil at worst. Eva says it's clear that there are people at the highest level who knew this attack on Israel would happen. An Egyptian intelligence official said Israel ignored repeated warnings of something big. Israel also had one of the most advanced, has had one of the most advanced militaries in the world and works in close cooperation with the CIA. There must have been people who knew and either wanted it to happen or they let it happen. It's also clear that many are now angrily beating the drums of war, just like we've seen throughout the Russian-Ukraine conflict. People on both sides are eager to see the further escalation of this conflict, regardless of whether or not it launches us into World War III. I think that that's an extremely dangerous path for us to go down, and I'd exercise great caution in following any narratives like that. Before we start World War III, it's worth asking ourselves, who benefits from further escalation of this conflict? Who benefits from this war? If there's one thing that's for sure, it's that it is us ordinary people will not benefit from this war being escalated further, nor will the innocent civilians currently caught in the crossfire. Please pray for them. So for those who keep asking, what side are you on? First and foremost, my loyalties lie with God, family, and country. That's Jesus Christ, my family in him, and my own country. As this conflict escalates, it will agitate racial jihadist sentiments around the world, especially in Europe. And I've got a war room with Steve Bannon speculation on how that plays out, but carrying on. I'm extremely concerned with the mobilization and emboldenment of the millions of military-aged Muslim men imported into our homelands. Hamas just announced this Friday, the 13th, would be a day of general mobilization in the Arab and Islamic world. With the insane and most definitely intentional demographic shifts we've seen in Europe, having millions of fighting-age Muslim men imported over the past decade, I'm expecting riots and most likely violence all over Western Europe as this conflict escalates. Major cities in particular will be dangerous. This was to be expected at some point. We've warned about this happening for years, but the destabilization of Europe was also clearly warned by our overlords, divide and conquer in full force. Secondly, as it pertains to geopolitical strategy, I'm on the side of those trying to keep their heads cool, who don't want to see World War III started and who want to see as many innocent lives spared on both sides as possible. I don't know if that side even exists at this point. I don't know how this will all unfold, but I do know that for now, acknowledging that I don't know what I don't know is the side I'm on. Right, indeed. Being humble about what you're aware of, but pointing out what we know is a good place to be. Jack says, Israel said they will unleash hell on Gaza and the citizens need to clear out. The only problem with this is Gaza is basically an open-air prison and the residents aren't allowed to leave. Obviously, Israel needs to respond, but telling civilians to leave a city that they aren't allowed to leave seems ridiculous, right? Seems all part of the plan, right? That's exactly what was planned. Here is Colin. He says, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told President Biden that Israel has no choice but to launch a ground operation in Gaza. We have to go in. We can't negotiate now. We need to restore deterrence, Netanyahu said. The report claims that Biden did not push back against the Prime Minister. The footage below has been released by the IDF. The Air Force planes have been carrying out extensive attacks along the length and breadth of the Gaza Strip, wreaking havoc on Hamas terrorists. In just 3 hours, about 130 targets were attacked using dozens of planes. Here is just some of that footage, and here we go. It's quiet. You're seeing buildings blown up fully. So it's pretty interesting and devastating for anybody who would be caught in that kind of crossfire. Here is CTV News reporting, Israel pounds downtown Gaza City, threatening punishing retaliation for weekend attack. Click on the image below to read more. Now, how many people would be needed to coordinate? Oh, I'm not in the scene. How many people would be needed to coordinate the attack we saw? We saw the attack on the festival near the Gaza fence, I think, and apparently that festival was moved a couple of days before it started. We've seen horrific door-to-door situations. We've seen killing here and there, indiscriminate killing, et cetera, et cetera. I think the death toll was somewhere around 1,000 people, maybe just less, like maybe 900 people. It's terrible, and I don't want people to die. I'm not saying, well, blah, blah, blah. I'm not trying to diminish the horrific thing that happened. But making the Gaza Strip that's an open air prison, essentially, people can't leave, bombing the crap out of that, is that really going to solve the problem? Is that really going to get rid of the issue that has been fostered and funded, both sides, Israel and Palestine, Hamas, by the United States, the West, funded? Everybody's sending these people money. Everybody's sending Israel money. Everybody's sending Palestine money. And you know the old adage, you can put black ants and red ants in a jar and they'll hang out and everything's kind of cool. And then if you shake the jar, they will fight, right? The situation here is you're seeding the black ants and the red ants, and then you're shaking the jar, right? And it seems to me that if you had a couple of targeted, how many targeted? 5, 10, 15. Apparently there was paratroopers, there was a Navy situation with sailboats, there were people just crossing the border, the fence border with tractors. So you've got 3 vectors of attack there. If you do that and do as much chaos as you can, maybe these guys are suicidal, maybe these guys are not suicidal, they go back to Gaza, to their, wherever their headquarters, if it was headquartered in Gaza. But are they really Hamas people? Are they representatives of this government, Hamas, the government that was elected, but then said no more elections and I said yesterday, only had a certain amount of legitimacy? Is this operation that group's responsibility? If it's that group's responsibility, how do you realistically hold them responsible? Is this a sane international, or is this a sane response? Considering all of the history, even in the last 5-10 years, I think that it's probably outside of what international law would say, okay, sure. Imagine that if the the United States launched the invasion of Iraq after 9/11, which, didn't make a lot of sense, right, either. So, and nobody was held accountable for that. But it's one of those things where you look at this, and if they wanted to solve the problem, I think they would have gone one direction. And if they wanted to start a war, they would have gone in this direction. And so I don't think they want to solve the problem. That's fundamentally what I'm saying. And further than that, they want you on board to pay for it. Here's Truth Poll, and he says Israel issues a warning to the Egyptian authorities that the Israeli Air Force will conduct airstrikes if aid vehicles enter Gaza from Egypt through the Rafah crossing. So food, electricity, and water has been cut off to the whole of Gaza, including 1.8 million civilians, and nobody can get aid for the civilians. Jeremy McKenzie is pointing out that this is a war crime, the way that this is being rolled out, and I'll show you that as well. Here's Justin Trudeau talking about the conflict in the Middle East. Here we go.
The glorification of death and violence and terror has no place anywhere, including and especially here in Canada. So let me be very clear. Hamas terrorists aren't a resistance. They're not freedom fighters. They are terrorists, and no one in Canada should be supporting them, much less celebrating them.
Hard to disagree with that, but at the same time, it's interesting. We have changed the demographics to the point where there are a lot of people who are celebrating the Hamas victory in Israel, okay? And what kind of victory? If it's not a victory, because you're going to there's a counterpunch coming, and the counterpunch is going to be worse than what these people did to Israel. It's not a victory, right? If anything, the victory is escalating the war or something to that effect. It's interesting, though, to me, the rhetoric around this. Hamas are terrorists. They're not freedom fighters. No one in Canada should be supporting them, and much less celebrating them. I think a lot of people will agree with all of that. But the so what of it is we should support Israel monetarily. And everybody's done with the Ukraine war. Nobody wants to send any more money to Ukraine. So Ukraine and Israel are stand-ins for each other. It's a way to it's a way to take Canadian tax dollars, take our production, and use it for somebody else's means. And so it's interesting to me that that's the kind of rhetoric that's coming from the prime minister. I've got Pierre Poilievre as well to show you in just a minute, but Gregory says, worth noting that the US, Israel, and Iran are all denying Iran's direct involvement and all have strategic reasons for doing so, even if Iran was directly involved. Upshot, nobody wants to escalate this into a broader Israel versus Iran conflict, not yet anyway. So it's interesting to me, this operation had an objective. The objective was not to start a world war, was not to have a situation where Iran was brought into a war, although Russia is threatening they will if something doesn't or if something happens, Iran will join. But it's interesting to me that it seems like at this point that it's targeted. It seems like this situation is going to happen. We're going to respond to Palestine or respond to the Gaza Strip, and the operation's done then. We don't want to bleed this into anything else. But other people are talking about that kind of stuff. Here's Steve Bannon. This is 2 minutes. They're talking about how the demographic change in the United States makes something like this plausible. Something happening similar to this could happen in the United States. And Bannon says it will happen in the United States. It's just a matter of time. I don't know, but it's interesting. We'll watch it. We'll check it out. What do you think? Here we go.
They detected that 24 known terrorist affiliates had illegally crossed into the country from the southern border. And here's the scarier part. They don't know where they are today. That is who they know they missed. So the question you have to ask, Steve, is how many hundreds, if not thousands, of cartel members and terrorist allies and CCP affiliates infiltrated through the southern border, because they're coming in at the rate of what, 21,000 a month, that the U.S. does not know about. And Joe Biden wants to give them ID cards so they can come in.
21,000 a month. We had 260,000.
Sorry,
oh,
yeah,
no, 260,000.
Yeah,
that would be 26 combat divisions of what we know. There's another 100,000, another 10 combat divisions of gotaways. The scale of this is so overwhelming, and the IG just said we don't track them.
We don't. And it goes back to the question we were talking about earlier.
Here's my point, but Cash gonna come. That's why I need everybody in this audience to see the footage. We can't play all the footage; it's too horrific, even on a streaming service. Everybody in the audience, every adult. This is not for children. Every adult should take some time today to see the footage of what these animals did to the people in Israel. And these are just, you know, these are the old women, these are families, they're shooting children, the girls. Okay? That's going to happen in the United States of America. That day is coming. Write that down. That day is coming because of what we're allowing to happen on the southern border.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, just think about it. Do the math. They admitted to us they have 24 terrorists here in America they can't track. 220,000 a month. What if 1% of those individuals were affiliated, 1%, with criminal organizations that we know of, with cartels that we know of, with foreign terrorist organizations that we know of, and they are in and around America and have been moving in and around America for 2+ months with CCP funding, Iranian support, Mideast terrorist organization financing, all to do one thing: establish sleeper cells in the U.S. and wait for the right time to do this to us.
So be wary of people who want to stoke your fear triggers, right? COVID's going to get you. Oh my gosh, right? The terrorist guys are going to get you. Maybe, but what happened in Israel seems planned, yes, but like it seems like go in and do as much chaos as you can, and we're going to blame these guys. So make sure you don't stay there very long, right? It seems like, but what would they gain in that situation? A civil war? A civil war would not go well, especially when you can't tell who's who, because who knows at that point in time. Is this a plausible something that could happen? Sure, absolutely it is. But is this something that is like you should be worried about on your walk tonight? Probably not. But at the same time, it's something to be aware of. It's plausible, but I wouldn't be looking under every blade of grass for whatever. The idea. For me, listening to Bannon, and he's talking about what these people did to women and children and grandmothers and so on and so forth, they were going for maximum impact. They weren't going to cut off the military response of a country. They weren't going to take control of of specific areas to establish a foothold to take control of the whole country. They weren't militarily coordinated. They didn't stake out a place to defend. They went back to the Gaza Strip. There's so many things here that make me think this is for maximum impact. This is a Pied Piper situation to say, let's go kill those animals. Let's make sure they don't do it to us here. Same thing. You don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud. It's the same. It's the same damn argument. It's the same thing. It's Iraq all over again. And if you say we probably shouldn't do this, they're going to say you're with Putin. How dare you? You're with Iran. You're with the monsters Hamas, right? Here's Pierre Poilievre saying the same thing that everybody else has said, and you agree with it because you're like, yeah, these women and children and innocent people didn't deserve to die at the festival. We're missing it. We're missing the forest from the trees here. We're being manipulated. This is manipulation, and it's top-notch manipulation. People love it. People love it. I'll show you how many people go out to celebrate being manipulated to pay more money for a damn war we have nothing to do with at all. Here we go.
In starting my remarks tonight, let me be explicitly clear. Hamas is not a militant organization. It is not an activist organization. It is surely not a government. It is a sadistic, demonic, genocidal, terrorist death cult, and it must be defeated and destroyed.
Right. So everybody knows exactly what the Freedom Convoy was, right? Here's Nar City. The Freedom Convoy protesters aren't actually fighting for freedom. Pierre Poilievre knows what Hamas is, right? This is a 7 minutes speech, right, from yesterday. But Pierre Poilievre knows that they're violent, vile criminals who need to be hunted down and blah, 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 blah. It seems just like after the Freedom Convoy people did what the Freedom Convoy people did, then the news came in and the government came in and started reimagining what the Freedom Convoy was to suit their narrative. And it seems like that's exactly what's happening here. Just, it stinks to high heaven. I feel manipulated. I think that's what this is. I think that's 100% what this is. Michael Geist says, Hatikva, I don't know what that says. In Ottawa, with both Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre united in support of Israel, this is manipulation. Here we go. What does this have to do with Canada? Right? Here is Ezra Levent says, Conservative MP Melissa Lantsman gave a powerful speech and warned against Liberal MPs who pretended to support Israel now, but who will in the days ahead condemn Israel for fighting back. So there's a lot of people. I'm not going to play the speech because I'm not interested really in what she's saying. But I wanted to show you the size of the crowd. Hold on. They were all out of order. Here's the crowd size. Lisa Frum says, zoom in and you'll see that this is a photo of 15,000 Toronto community members expressing solidarity, love, and commitment to the people of Israel. Thank you to the leaders who joined us from across the political spectrum and from all levels of government. Israel will prevail. This is in Toronto. Israel will prevail, right? Sure. Yeah, Israel. Great. Here is Doug Ford, Premier Ford at Mel Lantsman Square to show support for Israel. So he's there and rallying for foreign country. Ezra Levent says, trying to get to the Toronto pro-Israel rally, but Olivia Chow's police have closed down all traffic within half a mile of the event, blocking roads with garbage trucks, stopping the Jewish community from rallying, but they escorted the Hamas rally downtown. So apparently the closing down of the traffic didn't stop anybody from making it in, though. That's, weird, right? Was the traffic stopped or not? I'm not sure. Here is Nigel Farage, and he's talking about the coverage of the pro-Palestine rallies, and he's saying similar things to other people, but talking about the media coverage of this. Here we go.
Well, it's the morning after the night before in London, and you can see all over the newspapers pictures such as this. The media are getting this all wrong. They're saying Palestinian protests. No, they weren't protests. They were celebrations. They were pro-Hamas celebrations taking place on the streets of London, Brighton, Manchester, and indeed Newcastle as well. They are celebrating kidnap, rape, and murder. They are coming out with some of the most appalling slogans, incitements to violence. This is pure racism. And yet, if I was to make a single comment on GB News or elsewhere that was deemed to be Islamophobic, I would be closed down. Something is going very, very badly wrong here. Well, it's the morning.
Yes, very badly wrong. This is all, it seems like a coordinated plan. Here is Andrew Lawton reporting, there are no civilians, an open call at an Edmonton rally that every Israeli is fair game to be killed. And I thought, I'm not going to play this video because, you know, I don't know if it's going to be worthwhile listening to, because sometimes ranting just sounds like ranting. But here are people trying to make the argument that there are no civilians in Israel and all Israelis are fair game. And like children were killed. Children are innocents. They're not members of the military. However, this person is railing against Israel, but it's dishonest in a multitude of ways. Have a listen. Here we go.
Let me explain this. There's no civilians. There's no civilians. First off, any Israeli is under the Israeli law should enlist and serve in the Israeli army. There's no civilians. They're either on or off duty army forces. They're not civilians. And if they're civilians, what are they doing at the border? What are they doing?
So there we go. It's interesting what's going on with regards to police and mayor like Olivia Chow supporting Palestinian or Hamas protests. People are pushing back on that, but at the same time, there are a lot of people attending them. I haven't seen crowd pictures that rival the Israeli one, but Mayor Olivia Chow says, I'm aware of the unsanctioned rally at Nathan Phillips Square today. My statement below. The government of Canada has rightly listed Hamas as a terrorist organization, and we simply must not tolerate any support of terror, full stop. The rally to support Hamas at Nathan Phillips Square today is unsanctioned, without a permit, and I unequivocally denounce it. Glorifying this weekend's indiscriminate violence, including murder and kidnapping of women and children by Hamas against Israeli civilians, is deplorable. I'm receiving updates from the chief of police who assures me they will investigate and address any suspected incidents of hate. The rally itself is an incident of hate, is it not? Toronto police say they're monitoring and keeping the peace. Toronto police officers will be on site at large gatherings today. The TPS will be present to manage crowds and keep the peace and ensure public safety. If you have concerns, approach an officer or call police to make a report. Ezra Levent says, Toronto police are not stopping the terrorist rallies. They're protecting them, escorting them, assisting them, removing any Jews who do come around to counter-protest. Hamas is an illegal terrorist group in Canada, but Toronto police answer to Olivia Chow, and she's pro-Hamas. Very interesting stuff. I don't know if all of this division was part of the plan, but it certainly plays into the plan. So people are very happy with all of this division that seems to be sowing more and more arguments, more and more displeasure, more and more difficulty in Canada and everywhere else. You can't say like, keep your head cool. Like, just chill, man. Like, people lose their minds. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful